My father has always been against any confrontation or arguments. He is extremely passive, refuses to stand up for himself, and avoids any conflict. If someone isn't paying attention while walking and bumps into him, he insists it's his own fault. If his employer would mess up his salary, he wouldn't bother fixing it. If a mechanic didn't properly repair his car, he would just accept it as is. This unfortunately resulted in a tumultuous childhood with my insanely narcissistic mother. She controlled his every move. She got him to quit his job and be a locked-in stay-at-home dad. She had him do every chore. She insulted him at every step. She cheated on him relentlessly and even brought APs into our home. She enjoyed making his life miserable every day and he never questioned it. My extended family, God bless them, were there for me so many times as much as they could be. They tried for years to make my father leave but he never budged. When she would direct her anger onto myself, in the form of screaming, insulting or general demeaning, my father never once found the guts to stand up for me or support me. When I was a kid, if I cried to dad about something mom did or said to me, he would sweep it under the rug or just insist I forget about it. Hell, he would even try and justify it. As I grew older, it really set in for me how messed up this was. My mother gladly kicked me out of the house when I was 18 and my father just sat there and looked sullen. Didn't say a damn thing. I joined the Air Force almost immediately and got stationed on the other side of the country. The dynamic was awful and I could have easily gone down the incel route if not for therapy and the amazing people I met along the way. It took years for me to get in a better mental space. I was filled with hatred. My mother left my father 2 years after I got stationed and utterly destroyed my father in the divorce. She was killed a year later in a DUI with one of her APs. I took a lot of joy in hearing that it took her hours to die, and that's when I really knew I needed help to process things. I'm almost 30 now, have a girlfriend who is perhaps the best thing to ever happen in my life, and fully understands the situation. With my family, I have learned to not allow myself to be consumed with anger and resentment by my past, or so I thought, you'll see, and instead put that energy to my future. I have been extraordinarily low contact / near no contact with my father since I left. As much as I try, I cannot make that connection with him. I recently went to a family reunion and brought my girlfriend with me. My father was there as it was his side of the family. They have many issues with him but he is family, so whatever, I guess. I made sure to avoid him. I was chatting with my uncles when I heard my father talk in the background. He was discussing how a coworker of his was going through a divorce as he discovered his wife was having an affair, and was positioned to have a very favorable divorce on his side. My father remarked how his coworker should work instead to forgive his wife and by his own words set a good example for unity and forgiveness, and how he believed he set a great example for me in that extent. I swear it was like a switch went off in my head and I was mentally back to being the rage-filled 18-year-old. All these years and he never learned a damn thing. I turned to him and asked if he was fucking serious. He looked at me and started to stutter. I know the next minute was pure word vomit and I can't relay it perfectly, but to sum it up, I shouted how he was a pathetic father, pathetic man. His family all know he's a disgrace of a human being who would rather his son be treated like shit than defend him because he's a fucking coward. No one would ever see him as an example to live by. His wife would rather fuck half the neighborhood than even touch him, and he should never ever believe anyone respects him. I began to derail and ramble between my shouting and my girlfriend quickly took me out and drove me home. It was insane just how quickly being away from him made me feel better. She just held me when we got back and told me it's okay. Again, best thing to ever happen to me. I was ashamed of how I lost it and am now going to resume my therapy, that's a given. However, I'm glad I finally unloaded. Always needed to be said. Onto him. Extended family is pretty mixed with reactions. His brothers / my uncles said it was time for him to hear it from me. My grandparents are pissed I did that in front of the entire extended family, with some saying I should have done that behind closed doors instead of everyone. Update 1. Thanks for the advice and recommendations, even amongst some of the UDA. However, some of them needed to be addressed because they were either hilarious or cringe-worthy. Some of them were very angry, and they kind of confused me at first until I saw their comments further down or saw their profile and saw rants about double standards or complete non sequitur ramblings about women. So yeah, not helpful advice, and they were great dark reflections about how I could have turned out if not for the support in my life too. Some attempted to portray my dad as a humble, kind, caring, sensitive old man who I'm just being a big bully too. This was a very good insight into how enablers of abuse get away with so much in today's worlds, because so many people forget how they are part of the abuse themselves. 3. Some were attempting to mentally dissect me or have a gotcha moment with me too, pull apart my story. That was generally asinine and I had to step away from those before they asked for my cranial measurements or something, so it was pretty much immediately when I was up the next morning that I realized I needed to resolve the events of last night. I first spoke to my girlfriend and gave a sincere apology for having her see me like that. She reassured me that nothing was wrong. She'd known me for years and has always known me to be level-headed, and understands why I kinda snapped. She herself has a history of dealing with narcissistic family, so she absolutely understands the dynamic. She only really told me that it would be best to work on spending time around my extended family since my father will always be there. I told her don't worry, I'm immediately going to talk to them afterwards to figure that out. So that part's fine. Looked like kind of an ass in front of her, but I'm making sure that doesn't happen again. I also informed of her my intentions to resume more therapy just to keep myself steady, which she was happy to hear. I called my grandparents and sincerely apologized as well for putting such a sore dent into their family reunion. That it wasn't appropriate, and while I still feel it felt good to say that to him, it should have been privately and not in front of everyone. I also told them that going forward, as much as I love spending time with them, since the family always hangs out in one group that my father will always be in, for now until I can handle being around him, I need to distance myself occasionally until I feel comfortable interacting. I told them that I am nor would I ever be establishing an ultimatum or demands of them, and that either way I need to step back. I guess during my apology and explanation I was kind of just going on a tangent because my grandfather interrupted me to calm down. He told me that after I left, people kind of separated or slowly started leaving, and they eventually were able to talk to my father one-on-one. I guess seeing me have such a freak out resulted in my grandmother having a mini freak out of her own when she started talking to my father, resulting in her kicking him out. While I have a great relationship with both, my grandmother has always been extra protective of me, so seeing me that way must have set off a fire in her. My grandfather then said that it has become a bit of an open family secret my father's failing. His brothers taunt him about it and generally don't have a great relationship with him, and for my grandparents it's always just uneasy. But seeing me the other day and how it still affects me so much has really liked in for a lot of people that it was really bad. They began to try and say sorry if they didn't do enough, which I very adamantly retorted that they did more than what anyone could have expected. It was very emotional for a minute, but culminated in then telling me that they have decided to distance themselves from my father for the time being, and have given him the ultimatum that unless he has a deep introspective and regularly goes to therapy, that distance may become permanent. My extended family, I've been told, are going to try and reach out or call or whatever, but I asked them if they could relay to them that it's not necessary, and that I'm fine and am sorry to them as well for ruining the day, which again, they told me I shouldn't apologize for being hurt. Since then, extended family have sent some messages with the general consensus that it's okay, with some older members complaining about my lack of respect towards my father, and finally, I texted my father hoping to meet at a local coffee shop and have a final talk. I met him and he didn't look good. I think his parents tearing into him finally got the message through. I had so many things I could have said, but I instead asked him first thing if the coworker he gave the advice to took it well. He just said that neither him nor several coworkers interact with him anymore. I asked him if he truly 100% believes that every single thing he did for me as a child was for my benefit. He didn't really say anything. I then finally asked if he has any regrets for how I was treated as a child, and if he thinks he ever did anything wrong. He looked utterly defeated and just mumbled that he could have done more. I could have poked and prodded and could have gone on another rant, but instead I told him this should be goodbye and I hope he gets the help he needs. I think finally unloading my frustrations was what I needed to finally be able to move on and find peace. I absolutely need to keep on track for therapy and admit that a public bitching moment isn't okay, but I should be fine. The ability to control one's failures, yes, that's what I'll call your situation, is very powerful. Update 2. I met with my dad's brothers, who invites me out to a popular lunch spot. For context and clarity, Dale is the oldest brother. He is married and has a daughter and a son. My father is the second oldest. Self-explanatory. John is the second youngest, also married with a son. Bill is the youngest, married with 3 daughters. So anyways, we met up and I ripped the band-aid off, asking about my father growing up, what he was like beyond the basics I know, and what really is going on with their relationship. Dale sighed and boshily summed up that besides what I know, there is a lot of backstory I'm unfamiliar with that they never told me about, simply because it was never the type nor the place to. What I've always known is that my father was fairly normal when he was young, a little shy but fantastic academically, played sports occasionally, had a close-knit relationship with his brothers, and meeting my mom in high school junior year made everything go downhill. What I didn't know was that my father was a guiding figure for his 2 younger brothers, was generally seen as one of the nicest people, with a bright future ahead of him. My grandparents adored him and he even became a little bit of a golden child, but no one minded. The reason his family doesn't respect him is what happened to his behavior when my mother got attached to him. It first started simple. My mother acted rude and distant to the family. They weren't huge fans, but my father loved her, so they tolerated it. She became possessive and slowly isolated my father and convinced him to give up his ambitions and goals. Family became concerned and spent a long time trying to talk to him and convince him to leave. My father didn't budge and began to lash out. When I was born, my extended family tried to talk to my father about my mother's attitude. My father was angry and threatened to report them for harassment. He was in denial about her behavior. When Dale's wife was having fertility issues, my mother messaged her appalling and cruel things. When Dale was pissed and went to talk to my father, he told Dale to drop it and even justified it. Dale punched him and police almost got involved. Dale hated him going forwards. John grew to hate him when my mother insulted his son due to mild physical disabilities. My father cracked a joke about what she said. John hated him. Then finally Bill, who always idolized my father, tried to inform my father that my mother made a pass at him and urged divorce. My father responded with a maddening call of utter hate and relationship-ending words. To sum it all up, the more time my father spent with my mother, the more he began to repeat her attitude. When they all signs of abuse to me and tried to intervene, my father threatened to lie, to accuse them of worse things. My mother had money and lawyers and could make their lives hell if they tried, and my father would gladly let her. They were stuck and could only do so much at a time. The older members of the family, like the grandparents, great aunt and uncles and such, believe in the traditional mindset of family sticking together no matter what, while the generations further down want to keep a distance from him. They're all stuck between a rock and a hard place. There's more. They told me out it was all, essentially, that my father died on the hill for my mom, ruining his relationship with his brothers in the process. And when she died and destroyed him, he probably had to realize it was all for nothing. My grandparents seem to not want to accept the fact that he was lost, or maybe they hope he can fix his life. Who knows? This was a lot to process and was only confirmed by my father himself when he called me to ask about family therapy with us. I cut to the chase and asked if what I heard was true. He said yes. Now on to second story. Lent my grandmother's antique lamp to my best friend for safekeeping, and now she claims it as hers, risking our friendship. I, 45F, have a dear friend Lauren, 43F. We grew up together, and she was a bridesmaid at my wedding 20 years ago. Several years ago my husband and I had a great opportunity to work and live abroad for a few years. It required that we sell our house and most of our belongings, and put the rest in storage. One item I did not want to let go was a beautiful antique crystal lamp that belonged to my late grandmother. It holds many important memories for me. Unfortunately, our storage unit was so full that I was afraid I wouldn't be able to squeeze it in without giving up something else we wanted to keep. I mentioned this dilemma to Lauren, and she jumped in with an offer to hold on to the lamp for me. She said it would look gorgeous in her living room and she would be proud to display it there until we got back. I was thrilled. Well, our time abroad recently came to an end and we are now back in the US. We bought a new house, collected our belongings from storage, and are in the process of furnishing it. I asked Lauren for my lamp back, and she got all pissy and said that she understood it was a gift. I reminded her that it was a family heirloom that she promised to keep for me until I got back, but she insists that's not how she remembers it. She said she adores this lamp, it's the focal point of her living room decor, and that if I demanded it back our friendship would be over. I'm heartbroken. She is one of my oldest friends, and while she can be quirky, she's never done anything like this before. I don't want to lose her friendship, but I also don't want to lose a treasured family heirloom. It's also worth quite a bit of money, it appraised at over $2,000. To be clear, I am 100% confident that I did not tell her it was hers to keep. Given our lifelong friendship, I thought it was safe to leave it with her. I can't even fathom why she thinks I gave it to her. We are not rich, I would never give a gift that expensive to anyone. To make matters worse, I told my sister about all of this, and she hit the roof. That lamp holds memories for her too, and she was livid that it might be lost to our family. I've always intended to pass it down to my own daughter. So last week I told Lauren I want the lamp. She burst into tears and accused me of putting material things over friendship but said she'd give it back, although she keeps coming up with excuses why she's been too busy to either bring it over or let me come by to get it. Now I'm wondering if she's right. Is a lifelong friendship more important than a lamp? Ida for demanding it back, hurting Lauren's feelings and making her think I don't care about our friendship? Top commenter, she's the one who issued the ultimatum. She's the one who would rather have her aesthetic house with the lamp than you as a friend. She's the one who convinced herself you'd let her keep a beloved antique, despite the fact that she literally only has possession of it because you wanted to keep it. Her own logic/story is full of holes and she knows it. That's why she's going nuclear. When was the last time you were at her house? Have you seen the lamp recently? Are you sure it hasn't been broken or sold? Or is she just really so deluded that she built her room around an item she doesn't own, and has been showing of her antique for years? Oop, yeah, I have to agree with you. Thanks for your comment. Oh and yes, I did swing by her house to say hello a few weeks ago when we first got back, and the lamp was there. I didn't ask for it back at that time because we were still in the process of buying a house, so I had no place to put it. But I do now, and damn it I want it back. I'm hoping she's just behaving like this because she really did remember it wrong. It has been a few years, after all, and just hasn't come to terms yet with losing something that she clearly has fallen in love with. I will try to reason with her and see what happens, but all of the responses in here are solidifying my initial belief that I am not in the wrong by demanding it back. Commenter, having read most of the responses so far, I think if it was me, I'd send a letter, email, whatever that puts this good advice together and points out the flawed logic that she is using, and then give her a few days to think/reconsider. It seems like this behavior is really out of the blue from what you described, so maybe something's gone wrong. I mean, who knows? It could be that she was always like this, and you didn't see it. Friendships sometimes be like that. But, there might be something else going on. If a little time and a clear-headed look at the whole situation doesn't elicit a reversal on her part, then I agree with all the posts that suggest pursuing the lamp through whatever means you need to, because in the end, that is the final part of your boundary, and she has made the decision to sacrifice a friendship. What a shame. I hope she, sees the light. I'm sorry. It was just right there, and I'll see myself out. Oop, I wish I had time to respond to all of these comments, but right now I'm just responding to the few that really strike home. So, yeah. You've touched on multiple important points. First, this is definitely not normal behavior, but I mentioned she's a bit quirky. What I meant by that is that she can be a bit OCD. So maybe what's going on here is that for some reason she has become kinda obsessed with this lamp, and has convinced herself she's in the right? I tend to be a compassionate person, and it sounds like you are too in recognizing that maybe something's gone wrong in her life leading to this bizarre behavior. Given that I've been overseas for the past few years, it's possible there's something going on that I don't know about, although we have kept in touch from afar, and she hasn't mentioned any major issues. But your point is worth exploring. I've read all of the responses so far, and they have confirmed for me that I'm not in the wrong by asking for it back. I still would like to think there's a chance of saving the relationship. I like your idea of trying to have a rational conversation with her, maybe in writing, and trying to dig into what might be going on in her life causing her to not see the logic in my right to ask for it back. Best case scenario, she senses my compassion and care for her in asking what might be going wrong in her life, rethinks her position in keeping the lamp, and agrees to give it back and talk things out with me. Thanks again for your feedback. And your witty last line gave me a giggle. Smile commenter. Something that has not been touched on that will be a likely default on Lauren's behalf, is that she will do everything to play the victim in your social circles and paint you as a pariah, since she's already threatening you with throwing away a 20-year friendship over a lamp. In today's social media obsessed world, she'll come out as the one who's been wronged. You make a very good point. The good news is that she's not really much into social media. We do have a lot of friends in common, but she's generally not the type to go around airing dirty laundry. I'm still hoping she'll rethink her position and we can put this behind us, as I'm willing to forgive and forget. But either way, I'm getting that lamp back. As you pointed out, I didn't just give it to someone to use and potentially destroy. I trusted it with someone I've known my whole life, who has never done anything to harm me, as I felt better about it being with her than collecting dust in storage. And I figured my grandma would appreciate knowing it was being shown and loved while I was away. Update 1. I got the lamp back. I want to thank everyone who commented for all of the support. It helped me to see how I was allowing Lauren to manipulate me into believing that somehow I was in the wrong for wanting my lamp back. Early this morning I drove over to her house. It's Saturday, so I figured she'd be home, and she was. I could tell as soon as she opened the door that she knew why I was there. And yes, the lamp was there. Someone commented a suggestion that I bring her a bottle of wine to thank her for caring for my lamp, and I thought that was a great idea. Lauren does love wine. Smile. I brought her a very nice bottle that we brought back from abroad. I said I'm sorry things have gotten tense between us, and I do value her friendship very much. I handed her the bottle and told her this is a gift to say thank you for taking such good care of my grandma's lamp. I said I'm sorry if there was any confusion about my intention in letting you hold on to it, but I think you know now how important that heirloom is to me and my family, and I need to take it back. She kept saying she believed it was a gift, but I stood my ground and said she is remembering it wrong. I reminded her that this was a family heirloom. I said think about this. To you, it's a pretty lamp. To me, it's a reminder of my departed grandma, and all the wonderful times spent in her house with this lamp lighting up her living room. How could she argue with that? I didn't get angry, I remained calm but firm. In the end she just threw her hands up and said fine, and I unplugged the lamp, gave her a hug and left. She was clearly upset, but I didn't stick around to see how she reacted. I don't know what's going to happen with our friendship. I will say that I feel differently about her now, but if she is willing to move past this, so are my lifelong friends are hard to come by, and one dispute shouldn't end it. If we do move forward, I will know not to trust her with something like this again. But it's entirely possible I will never hear from her again. I don't plan on reaching out anytime soon. There were too many comments for me to address them all, but I want to answer a few questions. First, I wasn't going to get the police involved. This is a civil matter, not criminal. I know I had the option of small claims court, and I guess I would have if necessary. I have plenty of photos of that lamp in my other house, and even in my grandma's living room. My sister lives in another state, so bringing her wasn't an option. My husband would have come with me, but I wanted to try to work this out between us. Yes, I should have gotten something in writing before we left, but it was a very chaotic time and I just didn't think about anything but being grateful I didn't have to figure out how to squeeze the lamp into storage.